When you arrived at Darrow Wilderness Camp, they took away your watches. The trip leaders would tell you, the campers, that watches had no meaning in the wilderness, and so instead, they would teach you how to use the horizon in your fists to measure how many hours you had until sunset. In June of 2001, me and 11 others were heading up to Quebec for a 7-week whitewater canoeing trip. We were going deep into the woods, and so we left our watches and we left our money. I was 15 years old. From the central coast of Maine, we drove 540 miles northwest. The last 3 hours of the trip were spent on this rumbly dirt road that ended very abruptly in a yellow road sign that simply said, "Fin." I was told this was French for end. And so we unpacked our canoes and our supplies, we assembled our tents in a windstorm, and we sat there and we watched the van drive away back towards home and civilization. Our maps were 50 years old. They were annotated by the last Darrow group that had traversed this route about a decade previously. We had a satellite phone, and we had an EPIRB. That was something that connected us directly to the Canadian Coast Guard in case of emergency. Aside from that, it was just us. 12 of us, ages 15 to 26, 6 canoes, 50-year-old maps, and a whole shit ton of wilderness. That van had dropped us so far away from civilization that we didn't actually pack water. We could just dip our Nalgene's in the rivers and the lakes as we canoed through them and drink right out of it. We were just teenaged humans, plucked from Philadelphia and from Boston, from Jersey, from Maine, and plopped down into this part of the earth that I only now ever see when, like on those tracker maps when I'm flying home from Europe. And yet we weren't aliens in the wilderness. We woke up with the sun, we went to bed with the wood pile from our campfire, we shit in the woods, we bathed in the lakes. There's that saying, like a tree falls in the forest, yada yada. And I always think about that because we sang so much. It was just 6 canoes filled with the only humans that this part of the earth had seen for years, just paddling through and belting out John Prine and Queen and the Sound of Music. We spent entire days trying to solve single riddles. Now, if you tell a riddle in the forest, what do the beavers make of it? Probably not a lot. We were just nature's noise. So what happened is that Thomas got sick. This was about 5 weeks in. We spent a lot of time dragging our canoes through the water while wearing hiking boots, and basically doing this had irritated a cut on Thomas's ankle, which had become infected. Not bad at first, but it kind of became bad. So Thoreau says, there's no better place to find yourself than in the wilderness. What he doesn't say is that there's no worse place to find yourself than in the wilderness when you're in need of modern medicine. And so we pulled over, we pitched camp on this sand spit that was across the river from a cadaver of a forest fire. We sat there, we pitched camp, and our trip leaders brought out that satellite phone for the first time, and they called base camp to ask advice about what to do. So we were on that sand spit for 4 days. For the 5 weeks previous, it had just been us that had communicated with each other, who's gonna, get the firewood today? What are we gonna cook for dinner? Did you eat some of those blueberries that we found? But now there was voices from space saying, what are his symptoms? Is he getting worse? On those 50-year-old maps, do you see a road a little bit north of your location? So one evening, our trip leaders called us out, and they said, Thomas really needs to get to a hospital. There's a road a little bit north of where we are, so we need to paddle upstream and hopefully catch a ride to the nearest hospital, which is a couple hours away. So that night, it's a full moon, and we went. We slipped the canoes into the river, we slipped ourselves into the canoes, we slipped our paddles into the water, and underneath the light of the moon, we went upstream several miles until we saw a bridge. It was a shitty bridge. It's like a one-lane road across the river, but it was so uncanny to see. It was evidence of people that weren't us, people that used clock time and paper money. And so we parked out there, we all stood, and we just waited for someone to drive by. I don't know how much time passed. I don't know how much time we lost. No one had a watch. But then, slowly, the rumble rang. And it got louder and louder and louder and louder until Like, it went from just being kind of a rumble until it was a deafening roar, and it was like in your body, and we were all like vibrating, and holy shit, like what's going, someone screamed, and I remember that, and it covered my ears, and I turned, and I looked away just down at the river, and then there was the light. It went from just faint to bright to blinding light in your eyes. It was just a logging truck. This poor French-Canadian logger had been barreling down this remote French-Canadian logging road at 80 miles an hour, just probably singing some fucking French-Canadian logging shanty song. Comes around a corner and he goes, "Mon Dieu," and slams on the brake, as you would if you like came around a fucking corner and saw 12 kids standing on the side of a logging road in the middle of abandoned Quebec in the middle of the night. And so he stops, and without what seemed like a lot of ceremony, he agreed to drive Thomas and one of our troop leaders to that distant hospital. And so they got into the truck, and they waved at us, and we waved at them from underneath the moonlight. And then that rumbling started again, got more intense, and it just moved through our bodies. And then all of a sudden, it was done. We were alone again, but we were fewer. 2 of us were abducted into that noise and into that light. 10 of us got back into the canoes, into our motherships in nature, and we went back down the river. 2 of us hurtled back towards civilization in a spaceship filled with firewood. But that's how we went. We moved further and further apart. We got back into our boats and went back into the woods. Thank you.